to the Economy and Skills, second meeting of the Economy and Skills Policy Committee. I'll go into the usual welcome spiel in a moment, but it strikes me that because we've had to move into this committee room and we don't have any microphones, that it could be challenging for people whose hearing isn't as good as it might have used to be, by which I mean myself. So if we can, at all possible, avoid talking over each other and wherever possible speak up. Okay, so welcome to the meeting. We'll start with the usual round of introductions, and if we can start with Amy online, right?
Yes, my name is Amy Rodbow and I'm a Policy Committee Officer and I'm clerk for this meeting.
Okay, and then if I can go up with the committee members first and then come back down with officers on the left hand side. So,
Councillor Tom Renhard, Fulfield Ward.
Councillor Payne Buckles, St George Troopers Hill.
Councillor Jenny Bartle, Easton.
Councillor Paula O'Rourke, Clifton.
Councillor Toby Wells, Knoll.
Councillor Serena Ralston, Clifton Down.
Councillor Mark Weston, Henry Braintree.
Yeah, Councillor Carter standing in for Calvin Blake, who's not very well. Can I just ask a quick question? Obviously, we're here today and this meeting's not being officially filmed.
Yeah.
So I raised this point in the Environment Committee on Thursday, and I'll make the same point again. For 7 years, every cabinet meeting I went to was filmed, recorded, put on YouTube, and now we've got policy committees. Nothing's being filmed apart from I believe the Finance Committee. And I just don't think it's acceptable, and it needs to be sorted out as soon as possible. I don't know what I don't know if you're having discussions as chairs or whatever with each other, but I just don't think it's acceptable.
I'll come back to that.
A more transparent system is with the committee system, and we're not getting that.
Right, I'll come back to that chair's business, Kai. And if I can have officers introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Joe Norris, I'm the Lib Dem Group Political Assistant.
Hi, I'm Sarah Hawes, I'm the Biodiversity Game Officer.
Samantha Welding, I'm the Chief Planner.
Laura Pickles, I'm the Enterprise and Business Support Manager.
Emma Hath, I'm the Head of Service for City Management and Response.
And Alex Hearn, I'm the Director of Economy of Place.
Thank you very much. So, safety information, there is no fire drill expected, so if you hear the alarm, if you exit the way you came in, presumably through the main entrance of the council, and then go down the ramp to the right hand side and assemble adjacent to the cathedral. That's the standard fire protocol. Apologies for, and the other thing I was going to say is there is filming taking place in the council house today, and it's due to start from about 5, so depending on when we finish up, you may be delayed on your way out through the main hall. If they're in the middle of a scene, you might have to be held back whilst they finish off. You're sworn to secrecy, whatever you see. You're not allowed to reveal it apparently, and don't take photographs of whatever it is they're filming there.
Can we ask him to turn the camera off and you tell us what they're filming? Because I'm now intrigued.
They wouldn't tell me, I asked them and they just said it's something for Channel 4, they wouldn't say what.
Anyway, we'll leave that there. Apologies for absence and substitutions. Kai's already given this information. So Councillor Calvin Blake is unwell and unable to attend, so Councillor Kai Dudd is substituting in his place, and everyone else is here, so it's a full house. Declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations of interest? No? Excellent. The minutes of the previous meeting. Is everyone who was at the previous meeting happy with the minutes as they're presented? Yeah. Okay, we shall consider those noted. Chair's announcements. So I had a few things I wanted to mention to people. So we'll start with the filming thing. So I would love to have us in the chamber and filming. And my understanding is they're going through a process of getting the technology updated and in place for that. However, it's taken some time to go through the to go through that process, but I will follow that up again because, you know, I think.
I know it's a small thing, but it's
No, you're absolutely right, and it used to bug me when I was chair of audit as well, because all the other committees, or a lot of the other committees, were filmed and broadcast, but audit never was. So it is something we're aware of, and it's something I'll follow up. A couple of things I wanted to make members aware of. The harbour place shaping strategy, which is part of the broader remit of this committee, is a consultation on that is now live. So it's open until the 4th of November. I'll send you information on that, and if you want to share that with your networks, that would be most helpful. It's a series of documents that look at what can be done around the harbour in different areas to improve the experience for all the users of the harbours and the residents as well. I know that other committees have other committee chairs have started a policy of bringing members' awareness to officer decisions that are made, officer executive decisions that are made, and I thought that was a good practice, so I'm going to follow that up. So the 3 that have happened since the last meeting we had, I've approved an officer decision notice for funding of a detailed funding strategy for the Bristol Avon flood strategy. So that's £278,044 specifically on a project to develop the funding strategy. I've approved £260,000 grant that's come to us from Homes England. It's spent by the Regen team on various projects, various of the Regen projects around the centre, and that's as per the updates that was provided at the last committee about the various bits of work that the Regen team are up to. And the final thing, and this is a slightly odd thing, I approved £370,000 of funding from the adult education budget to North Somerset, and this is apparently a legacy issue that we've got where we receive funds from the Education Skills Funding Agency, but for various historic reasons, a portion of the funds we receive are actually for North Somerset, and we just passport them on. So those are the 3 executive decision or officer decisions notices that I've approved since the last meeting. So that's my announcements. The next item is public forum. So we have 6 public questions and a public statement. So let me just get those up. Now, the first 3 questions came from Mark Ashdown of the Bristol Tree Forum. So you have up to 2 supplementaries. Now, can I check you've seen the answer? Well, I know you've seen the answers because you've communicated with me earlier. So, so can we take the answers as read, and if you can ask the first of your follow-up questions, please.
Thank you, Chair. The follow-up question to my first question, PGQ01. If you look in your papers, you'll see towards the end of the report, and this is really about the report about delegating the Council of Biodiversity net gain responsibilities back over to Baines, it seems, as a consequence of a sort of legal technicality that the Council, as a developer, can't enter into a Section 106 agreement with itself, so it needs to ask Baines to do it. I'm sure you all read the paper and fully understand the implications of that. One of the things that concern me, I think it's on page 7 of that report, it says separately a report requests approval to delegate the Bath and North East Somerset local authority responsibility for approving the Council's plans to meet the 10% requirement for biodiversity net gain. It's actually minimum 10% requirement, in fact, on all Council-owned properties. In return, Bristol City Council will fulfil the same role for neighbouring authorities. This has no financial implications with the additional activity to be managed within existing resources, is what you were told. However, if you look at the answer to my first question, it says it is anticipated that there will be a monitoring fee that will be required to be paid by the council as developer landowner to the delegated authority as part of the Section 106 agreement, blah, blah, blah. So it seems to me that you ought to be asking this officers, what is this monitoring fee? Is it in addition to the normal fees that a developer would charge or be expected to pay the council for monitoring its Section 106 agreement? And I imagine there will be administration fees that the delegated authority, Baines, is likely to incur that will want this council to pay for. And I think, you know, that is a potential, it's a risk to the council.
Are you coming to a question?
Well, then my question is this correct? Will there be additional costs as a result of this planned arrangement? It seems to me there will be.
Simone?
Well, there's not additional costs in the sense that you describe it. With every BNG scheme, there are the costs of monitoring, and those costs are what in this, and by the way, Baines is just an example, it could be another neighbouring authority. This is about a principle, and clearly would also reflect what we would charge another neighbouring authority asking us to do the monitoring and for them. So it needs to be very reasonable. Local authorities act on the basis of not making a profit, just recharging the cost. And in that sense, this is just a reasonable cost.
Yeah, it would be the same process as if a landowner came to us and wanted to secure the land under Section 106. We'd say, right, we want to be able to monitor that, there'll be monitoring costs involved, and Section 106 costs involved as well. So it's just part of the standard process of balancing the game, we expect.
Well, I don't want to enter into a debate about that, but I agree, it's as simple as that.
Have you got a second supplementary, Mark?
Do I get second supplementary for just altogether? Because it used to be in olden days, before the committee system was introduced, that there were 2 supplementaries for each question asked. So I don't want to waste my second supplementary, and that's not my question.
The old system was up to 2 questions and up to 2 supplementaries. So if you ask 1 question, you could still have up to 2 supplementaries. The new system is 3 questions and up to 2 supplementaries.
So. Under my question about who will the site be registered by, and the answer was Bristol City Council, my next question is, well, who will the site be registered with?
Well, it's like set out in the regulations. We are just following exactly what what is to be done there.
It would still, so the site would be registered with Natural England registered site because we're offsetting delivery of bioresin again. But we'd still own it, we'd still be managing it. It just means enforcement's being delivered by our local planning authority because we can't do it ourselves and be marking our own homework. So it just kind of facilitates that ability to enable us to kind of deliver bioresin again on our own sites, which we're really struggling to do at the minute.
So I think the answer is with Natural England.
Yeah, and it's just
Thank
like
you.
set out in the regulations.
Okay, thank you for those. The next 3 public forum questions are Suzanne's. Have you seen your answer, Suzanne?
Yes, I have, thank you.
Okay, and do you have supplementary or even 2 supplementaries?
I've even got 2. I've got more, but I'm only allowed 2. So I've been asking questions for a while about biodiversity net in relation to the loss of established trees. And one of my answers says, again, all this information is being captured at project level. So I'd love a clear answer to this. Is there any mechanism in the council to record the loss of established trees in a cumulative way by either ward level or super output level so that we can get an idea of how many established trees, and I don't want to go down this diversion of how many trees are planted, I mean the loss of established trees. Is anybody gathering that data by across the city or by ward level, not just each individual project?
We are not required in planning terms to gather that data, and therefore this is not something we can afford to do.
It's gathered to some extent in the metric that we're carrying out when we've got the baseline and the delivering a post-development value, and it says which trees are losing, and it's captured in that respect. In terms of they then have to replace those trees that they're losing to some degree with biomass gain requirements or the Bristol tree replacement standards.
But that's on a project level.
That's on a project level.
There's no requirement for us as an authority to capture the information you're asking for.
Okay,
Whether it might be done in under if there was another parks, if there was a duty on them to do it, but I don't think so.
Okay, thank you for that. Have you got a second?
So that was my, my second, I suppose, has changed slightly in the light of being told that it's not a requirement, because I would be hoping as a council that's declared an ecological and a climate emergency that you are hoping to go beyond minimum requirements. And so my question is, and of course you get, it's all muddled which committee at the moment, but will anybody be willing, because rather than allow urban heat in some areas and loads of trees planted somewhere else, would it not be helpful if the council did collect this to gain a pattern across the city about how many large established trees are being lost, and might that then sort of affect some planning decisions because you can't keep doing it? So is it possible for the council to look into that?
I'll take that as an action to speak to my counterpart on the Environment and Sustainability Policy Committee about whether that's something that needs to be followed through on. So I'll take that with Suzanne.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Right. And then we've got a statement from Mark. Mark, members have received and hopefully read your statement. Can you speak to it, please?
Thank you, Chair. I think our concern is that there's not enough information before you to make a decision today. We're rather disappointed that this is treated as a tacked-on item to a much more substantive issue, which I'm sure will garner a lot of attention within this committee. Our view is that you ought to see a draft of the Section 101 agreement that's proposed and a draft pro forma of the Section 106 agreement. These are not standard documents, and I think you as a committee ought to know what those documents say before you make a decision. I invite you, therefore, to postpone your decision about this until you've seen those documents. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Right, so that is public forum. So we now move to agenda item 7, which is the Bristol Operations Centre Tech Upgrade Report. So that is Emma.
Afternoon, Chair and Committee. The Bristol Operations Centre is the Bristol City Council's critical life and limb emergency centre. It operates 24/7, 365 to supporting the statutory duties of multiple services out of hours, as well as covering critical life and limb services. It was built in 2017 and it's operated on its analogue systems ever since with no upgrade. We have phase 1 capital investment agreed, and we are delivering well against that this year, and a second bid for phase 2 will go in because it's quite a big end-to-end piece of work that not just requires the systems in the physical operations centre, but also requires digital devices in our vulnerable service users' homes, which will be akin to the improved technology we all use today, rather than old analog alarm pins around the necks. So we've got a multiple choice available in the digital, which is much better for vulnerable service users. The Operations Centre also operates to support citywide safety, managing all the CCTV, and with very, very close liaison with all of the blue light services, and as a key pivotal centre in any incident and emergency. We need to move quickly now for phase 2, although we have commenced phase 1, I would say, very well, as the national digital switchover is due next year, and therefore we don't want our service users or our critical operation centre to be out of line and end of life operation. So this paper sets out some of the requirements, it sets out some of the value of the operations centre, but it seeks for the committee to approve the submission of the further capital bid for 1.14 million, which is to complete the phase 2 in accordance with the financial scheme delegation. It also seeks to authorise the Executive Director of Growth and Regen in consultation with the Chair of the Economy and Skills Committee and the Section 151 officer to proceed with the Bristol Operations Centre Technology Phase 1 and 2, subject to approval of further capital bid to be agreed by Council as part of the Council's budget process, up to the revised envelope for both Phase 1 and 2, including procuring contracts over key decision threshold as outlined in the full paper.
Okay, thank you very much, Emma. Can I just say on this, members, if we're talking about the Bristol Operations Centre, please be careful not to specify where that is, if you are indeed aware of where it is, and looking at the press as well, please don't identify where it is if you happen to know as well. And the other thing I want to say on this is thanks to Councillor Renard for his suggestion in terms of the framing of the second recommendation in such a way that we can make a decision today and the capital bid will go in, and assuming it's approved, the funding can go to Emma without coming back here for further ratification. So thanks for that, Tom. Members, do you have any questions or comments for Emma on this paper? Fabian, and then Toby, and then Mark.
Just a quickie on CCTV. Is it going to be, once all this is done, is it going to be sort of suitable quality to be used in evidence in court cases?
So the project bid actually is not to upgrade the CCTV, it's to upgrade some of the platform systems that sit behind it. So the physical ones that our operators, our officers use. Off the top of my head, about 80% of the city's CCTV, the physical camera unit, has already been upgraded to digital, and we have found that in the public space CCTV, it's already been pivotal in some of working with the police. In that we are working continuously with our housing colleagues to upgrade their CCTV, because we sort of manage an overarching one from public space to housing to car parking CCTV. So we do that in phases. We're working with our housing colleagues to do the housing ones now. But public space is 99.97p.
Cool. Toby, how do you next?
Well, firstly, I welcome the report, and having made a visit to the centre a few weeks ago, I've seen the value that the centre brings, both in terms of that it provides a service for the city, but also brings in some revenue for the city as well from other services. So on that latter note, I note that one of the things that we're funding is the cataloguing of the BNet fibre ducts and things like that. It's on the list of things, which is great, because I think that's an asset that we can generate more revenue for the city from that asset. My question is in parallel to that activity to sort of catalogue it and understand what we've got and where it is there a business plan being worked up about how we can market that asset and sort of generate more income?
Yeah, we actually have really reasonably good mapping. What that piece of work is to do a secondary piece that tells us what is connected to each of those fibres. It's really pivotal, which obviously helps with that. That's being drawn up at the moment. It's a bigger piece of work. We try, in this service, we try and do that with officers without additional resource and additional cost. We've done some soft market testing and are working with some interested parties who are giving us some ideas to do that. So that a business case, a 5-year business plan can be worked up, because I think that's an asset we can really commercialise.
Yeah. Thank you. Mark.
Thank you. Just around the costs, obviously for worth the project, I totally understand that. Is the projected cost for phase 2 in line with what was originally envisaged at the beginning of phase 1? Has it crept up again?
No, it was in line with what was envisaged actually at the outset. The reason there's 2 phases was because of when the first bid went in, there wasn't the available capital. So I had to put the whole thing into 2 phases based on the envelopes that were available each financial year. And it's, we know the ingredients, there's no investigation, consultancy or anything like that. This is pure
It's just now it's time to come forward.
Pure implementation of, if you like, the ingredients that are needed to upgrade to digital.
This looks like you're getting a final approval for everything else potentially in February next year. I'm guessing the budget council meeting is when it will appear. With the digital turn off, should we say the end of 2025, you've then got 10 months to get this racked through. Are you going to do it? Okay. And you have contingency plans in place for triaging the most sensitive things.
I have many things almost being lined up, as I said, at a zero cost, ready to press the button the minute that budget is ready. And we've prioritised phase 1 and 2, so that the most critical, i.e. vulnerable service users, their piece is done this year.
Right. Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, Kai?
Yeah, thank you. That's very important. Yeah, thanks Emma for the paper, and the Ops Centre is a tremendous asset to the city, and I've been down there myself, not recently, but a few years ago. My frustration is that we don't use it as much as we could, especially around issues like fly tipping. So my ward, Glencoyne Square, there's 2 cameras there. Right in front of it, there's a fly tipping hotspot, and I'm sure people are caught on camera all the time. But it's always a resource issue that we haven't got people to go back and look through the footage to try and find the incidents of fly tipping. Or I'm always told by the enforcement team, we need to resource that, we need someone to come in and go through it. So I just wondered with the software package that you're looking for, and I know there's some sort of AI, new AI software out there that can help identify issues like that, or it can pull up issues like certain incidents that you instruct it to look for. So I just wondered, is this package going to help us with things like that? Because we can have the best systems possible, but if we're still relying on somebody to sit down and look through the footage to find wrongdoing or those incidents of fly tipping, then we're always going to come up against the resource issues. So, just wonder if you've got a view on that.
I think there's a couple of fold answers in there.
Yeah.
Firstly, we work weekly with the enforcement team in the Ops Centre, and we will focus on any area they need us to, and we can record footage and pull that footage back for 28 days, and supply it to anyone in council or under a subject access request. Some of the technology we're putting in will enable, because it's digital, will enable that future of smart piece. It's a smaller percentage on the CCTV, because the biggest need is around some of the systems that support vulnerable service users and alarms for vulnerable people. So there's a big proportion of the programme that's actually to support vulnerable service users, but there are digital elements that can be switched on in there, and we can definitely look at those and what's possible. The aim is that we use the Ops Centre and its assets like BNet to bring in the revenue and self-fund developments like that.
Thank you. Serena.
Yeah, just wanted to ask a bit more about revenue. So just touching on what Toby was saying, I can see that the operation centre has a pivotal role in the city. You can see that in August and what played out on our streets and the basketball you guys played, which is great. But in terms of revenue for services, how going forward are you intending to raise more? What's the target? Sorry if that's already been covered, I'm just interested. Sort of services.
So we already charge income for digital healthcare, or CCTV monitoring, for concierge services, because they cover things even down to the entry systems on every single housing block or car parks. So those things are chargeable if you need a physical person there. Those in fundamental principle wouldn't change under digital, but the digital tools do allow you to give gold, silver, bronze type packages, whereas the analogue doesn't. Under the very specifically, if you're thinking about the duct and fibre asset, that would be a piece of strategy that we looked at, because there are multiple ways in which under a telco you can do that, and that's what I'm
to look at.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or queries on this? No. Well, in that case, I'm going to thank Emma for the paper and for all the work that is done within the operations centre and more broadly within her area. I'm going to be doing a night shift down there in a few weeks' time. So
You just want to look at the CCTV cameras and see what happens.
I'm not sure I do actually, but I want to be able to see what the operatives down there have to contend with on a busy Friday or Saturday night when the city centre is full and people are revelling. So I'm looking forward to that. So we need to have a vote on the recommendations. So to recap, we are approving the submission of a further capital bid of up to 1.14 million to complete phase 2 of the project, and then authorising the Executive Director of Growth and Region in consultation with myself and the Section 151 officer to proceed with the spending subject to the approval of the capital bid and as part of the budget process. So, first of all, who is for supporting the recommendations in the report?
So can I just interrupt and just ask for a secondary, please?
Oh, and my apologies,
Yes.
Fabian.
Thank you.
So for, everybody's hands went up. Against, therefore no one against, and no abstentions. So that is passed. So thank you very much. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, colleagues. We'll move on to agenda item 8, which is the Weka Investment Fund grant funding for food and hospitality sector specific support initiative. And I just absolutely mangled that sentence. Warren, I assume you're presenting this?
Yes. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. So just a few summary points then. So hopefully everybody's got a chance to read the reports you submitted and highlight a few points. The fact that this is a project that's been built collaboratively, so we can all stumble over our words this afternoon, by the 4 unitary authority economic development managers in partnership with their combined authority colleagues. So just make the point this is a collaborative effort across the combined authority area. It's been designed, the project's been designed around funding opportunity from the West of England Combined Authority Investment Fund. So it's not Bristol City Council funding, it is from the combined authority. Shaped to support the food and drink sector across a range of themes at a time of real challenges posed by COVID, high and rising costs, and the need to improve sustainability. We're looking at supporting a sector that includes at least 10% of the region's businesses, so it's significant, with a large number of those based in Bristol. I think the project aligns well with Bristol's values, our current business support schemes, whilst at the same time it's a low risk sort of delivery proposal for the Bristol City Council and cost neutral as well to us. We believe this is a good intervention for the region and for Bristol, and basically I'm looking today for your support for the recommendations that we propose.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Barrington, first.
I just wanted to ask about what impact this sort of has on their team size and sort of kind of current team. We don't want to lose them. Are we going to get a bigger team? How long are we keeping them? Just sort of elaborate on that.
Okay. So it currently anticipated not to make any difference to the size of the team. Basically I'll be delivering the project myself. And, my post is funded from a number of external kind of grant funded streams, so we sort of like rebalance the workload and the funding to enable us to basically lead this without having to increase the headcount within the council.
Great.
Any other questions? Serena and then Mark.
Yeah,
just wanted to ask about how the decisions are made on the food and drink contracts themselves. I think as mentioned in the paper, sorry, I haven't got the page number. Is it always an officer decision, or will some of those be significant enough to have to come back to this committee?
All the decisions on procurement are made within the council's procurement rules.
Yeah.
So I think it was said in the report. The largest we're anticipating is, which is also in there, but not in, is £188,500 with the food works venue on the outskirts of Western, or the organisation that's hosted there. And that is a decision that does not, because it's below the threshold, does not need to come back to this committee. So it would be, but it would be a published decision once that contract is awarded.
Yeah,
Or
so
an
just for
officer decision
transparency.
notice, I think, the new term.
Yeah, it's all about transparency, so it's good to hear.
So it would be public information once it's awarded.
Okay, thank you. Mark?
Thank you, Chair. I confess I got slightly confused, so I'm afraid I'm going to do this verbal and ask some really stupid questions. Forgive me on this. Obviously, this is a WECA funding pot. Is this Bristol's share of it, or are we managing it with other local authorities, the neighbouring authorities? Just wondering if the 115 businesses is under support are all in Bristol, or is it wider?
It is a regional project that we will lead within the Bristol Economic Development Team.
Okay.
So those 115 businesses will be across the region. But I think we're anticipating that probably 50% plus are likely to be in Bristol.
Because of the nature of the beast, yeah. How come North Somerset's putting in £26,000 when they're not in WECA? And how much of the 115 they're expecting to get for that?
Okay, so the first part, North Somerset, the venue called Food Works South West, which is a food and drink business sort of sector support hub, which specialises in technical and specialist support for businesses in the sector, is based in North Somerset. So part of what this, so that's why the North Somerset Council's got an interest in the project.
So that's one of the two support hubs that's listed in the report then.
So what is anticipated is that the technical specialist team that's based in the venue will basically be dropped in to venues in Bristol, probably in Bath and in South Gloucestershire to deliver their specialist support in local venues in the region. So part of this project is basically expanding the role of the Foodworks team, or the benefit of the Foodworks team across the broader region. So North Somerset Council own Foodworks South West. So they're keen to see that kind of proposition that's hosted there to develop and prosper.
And final one, if I may, Chair. When we're talking about the 115 businesses we expect to support, it actually says on page 41 of our papers, 100 of these are expected to be established businesses. It seems to me it's very much a case of trying to take on the entrepreneurs who've grown from 1 or 2 businesses to 3 or 4 businesses, or start from scratch. How is it going to be written so that you don't end up with huge chains suddenly accessing it?
The support is aimed at small and medium-sized enterprises, so and the type of support that's on offer is very unlikely to be attractive to a large-scale operation, because it is about helping people get in the nuts and bolts right of their food and drink businesses, more on the earlier stages.
Right. No objections.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Paula?
I've just got questions around the sort of outcomes. So it says we're being asked to for the council to be the lead and accountable body for this regional initiative. How will we know that this is successful? How will we be able to measure it? Have you got any benchmarking now? And will a report come back to us at some stage? We're receiving a large amount of grant money, and it's very hard from reading this report to understand exactly what concrete improvements are going to be made.
Right, okay, so there are outputs and outcomes in the into the grant funding, so the 115 businesses, and there's a sort of lower level kind of breakdown of some of the effects that are expected from the funding. So that is
a very kind of simple measure. We've supported 115 businesses across the region, and that's a sort of measurable thing. The level of that impact is about how many new jobs have been created, or maybe how many new businesses have been started. So it starts to get a little bit more into the detail of it. But there's because this is a sort of been built collaboratively, and it's a sort of pilot idea. So it's like, here's a few strands of things that we can look at to support this sector. What will that achieve? So there is an element of the funding is aimed at doing an external independent evaluation. So in the last kind of 6 to 9 months, we will be commissioning somebody to come in and actually evaluate how effective that's been. So I would expect that then there will be a report back to this committee about what.
So that's a definite thing. There will be a report back, because I think that part of this approval today should be an acknowledgement of when the report back would be come to us. So what's the timeline on that then?
So that would come back around June 2026. That's when the funding.
Okay. So I presume, as you say there, you've built in some proper evaluation of it. So can I just say that we should maybe have that then as a...
Yeah, we can have that. And I assume there will also be a mechanism whereby West of England Combined Authority, the appropriate bodies within West of England Combined Authority will also be, I assume, looking at the outcomes and the effectiveness. But yeah, we can definitely have that back here.
Yeah.
Fabian.
Yeah, I mean, once this is launched, so when's it going to start, and how would we promote it amongst contact groups, so in case any businesses, independent businesses in our areas?
We're hoping to go into sort of operational delivery in October, so not from tomorrow, but as soon as possible. We're looking to get the contract, the main contract with the Foodworks team into place, and for sort of operational delivery to start. So engagement with businesses and residents that may be looking to start businesses will happen from sort of October onwards.
And then we'll be given some information that we can share.
Okay. Any other comments or?
Really quick one, test kitchens. I just wondered, is there already a test kitchen in the Bristol area? Is it something you're going to have to build out? And that's where some of the funding is going. I think that might have been what you said.
Okay, so the test kitchens are anticipated to be existing commercial stroke community kitchen venues. So we have spoken to a couple in Bristol. I'm not really sure if I should say, because they might not want that to be open knowledge, but they are community-based, community-focused kitchen venues that basically have spare capacity. So what we're anticipating to happen is that through Foodworks, their team will go and deliver the right sort of support in those venues that already exist with kitchen equipment that's already there, and that will be a small revenue stream into those community kitchens as well. So there's a double benefit to that approach, I think.
Yeah, so this could be something that was like a very well-equipped modern church hall or community hall.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? No? I'd like to thank you, Warren, for this report. We were, last week, Warren and I and others were at St Nick's Market for the opening of 3 new food businesses down there within a new unit as part of the changes within St Nick's Market as a whole. And 3 of those businesses are supported by the project that's alluded to, separate project that's alluded to within this paper, and it gave an insight into the vibrancy of the food sector in Bristol, but also in the opportunities it presents for small business people or people who want to start their own businesses with a little bit of support. They can provide a service that adds to the diversity of the food offer for the city, which is quite a big part of the small and medium-sized economy that we have here. So, so I'm supportive of this paper. With the proviso that we do have a follow-up report as and when we get to, you know, I think when it gets to that stage in a couple of years' time, can I have a seconder for the four recommendations in the report? And so Mark's hand first, I'm afraid, but sorry, Jeremy. And all in favour, please indicate. So that's, again, 9 in favour, none against and none abstentions. So thank you very much. Now, I didn't say at the start, but my chair's notes suggest a comfort break after an hour or so. We haven't been going an hour, and we're already at the prompt in my notes for a comfort break. I can see Jenny indicating that they'd welcome a chance to fill up their glass of water. So shall we take just a few minutes, till about 21 minutes past, just for a quick comfort break. It's just been brought to my attention that the electronic diary entry for this says employment and skills rather than economy and skills. So it's fine. Just it's like novelty. We're all getting used to the new system, including the names of the committees. Right. So we have got final item on the agenda, agenda item 9, which is the de-destination approach performance update and securing biodiversity net gain on council-owned land paper. Now this isn't a paper for, this isn't a key decision paper, but it's a paper to endorse the approach to pursuing de-designation for the council's planning service, to give us a general update which we'll note, and a separate endorsement for the suggested approach for BNG implementation on Bristol City Council owned land. I believe there's slides.
That's right.
So if we go through the slides, and then when we move to the discussion element, if we have a discussion around the de-designation and planning update to start with, and have that, and then have a separate discussion on the BNG implementation element of the paper, just to keep things cleaner from a from a conversational point of view, that would be grand. But if I can hand over to Simone for the presentation.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so I thought I would just give you a brief update on the planning performance, because the planning performance is clearly intrinsically linked with the de-designation element. And so the slides very much build on what we have previously also shared with the scrutiny committee last November, and just sort of therefore showing, you know, what we've been doing over the year, almost a year now. If we move on to the next slide, please. Actually, just to say one more thing, so clearly that was published with the papers about 2 weeks ago, and then we, just so that we've got the very latest picture, we've updated some of the key information this morning, which Amy then kindly circulated earlier today. And I think we'll be publishing that as well subsequently.
Yes, I plan to publish that after the meeting, but we've got the updated version up on screen now.
Indeed. But that slide is completely unchanged, so this is just in headline terms to say, you know, it's we've delivered as planned. It's particularly, so the two key strands of it, actually maybe there should be a third one, are around building capacity and substantially increasing productivity, which is around culture as well. Arguably that could be a third strand. And here are just a few examples. I could give you a lot more detail on these, but let's maybe move on to the next one, around the key sort of numbers, what it looked like in numbers over time. And so this is where we've slightly updated it. Only 2 things have changed, so it's in the September 24 to date. And actually, although we said there at the top of the table it's 30th of 9, it's strictly probably more like the 29th, because clearly today we're still issuing decisions, so I hope that by the end of today the numbers will go up further before decisions made and respectively applications 26 weeks old go down. Truth be told, I had hoped the September figures would look slightly better. There have been quite a number of disruptions, and I can tell you a little bit more about that, but in light of all of those, this is still, we're still pretty content with that, but we know now that actually we need to redouble our efforts on increasing productivity so we can move on even quicker. Within the 3 bullet points underneath, they are particularly noteworthy as well, because they, in my mind, just really highlight just how much change there has been. That out of the roughly 33 people in the core DM team, only 5 now have been in post longer than 15 months. Everybody else has either moved up into a new role or was recruited completely new over that period. And that just has been a massive effort in, so 13 staff are completely new to the council over the last 15 months, and 2 are still to start, and one tomorrow and the other one in about 2 or 3 weeks' time. And that's just been a massive effort in training and upskilling and bedding everybody in. But at the same time, it's I think therefore realistic to expect that we will see further productivity increases, because as people get more productive anyway, as they get more familiar with their post. But clearly we're not just relying on that, but also on additional improvements that we're making to make sure that we are increasing productivity. If we move on to the next slide, please. So this graph is another way of looking at the massive journey that we've been on. This is about the total amount of work in hand, where we've probably cleared now definitely more than half of what we needed to clear, maybe more like 2/3. But the green line is where we need to get to have a really good service. And it, I suppose again also illustrates where before the service was delivering with far too much baggage ongoing, and therefore it was all too easy for it to get pushed over the edge. So we're back to, you can't, on the screen you can't see it all that well, but we're roughly back to where it was before the backlog spiraled out of control. But clearly we need to keep on improving and actually getting it to this better place, and that's, and I am confident that we should be able to do it quicker than that sort of dotted line there suggests, but that's where it goes back to increasing productivity is now the absolute crucial thing that we need to make sure we further improve productivity, because otherwise it takes us too long to get there. If we move on to the next slide, and again you can't see that on screen, but hopefully if you get time to study that at home in more detail, you will see that actually there is quite a lot of encouragement in that, because if you look particularly at the very last row, you will see that, so basically what it always is, it compares the average of all decisions in a quarter to the decisions that are purely made on the applications that also were received during that quarter. Because we switched on a new service an improved service last December, where we were treating them, giving them basically priority to make sure that they don't get too old before we determine them. that's why the lower row is always much better than the average. And where basically the idea is that we clear once we clear the old backlog, then everything is being dealt with swiftly. But also, the more we've got the backlog cleared, the faster we can deal with stuff coming in as well. Because it's just around the balancing act that we're trying to do, that by dealing with the new stuff quickly, that we're not disadvantaging the cases in the backlog too much, and that has been one of the most tricky balancing acts, I would say. If we just move on to the next slide, please. Something that we've also started quite new, so from 1st of July, we've included a link in every decision notice to give applicants the opportunity to give us some qualitative feedback, and we're starting to get some more responses. So we've had 25 on those by now. And again, it's clearly a mixed picture, but actually it's starting to look much better than we had dared to hope, because it just also shows that certainly those who are going through the improved service are actually experiencing quite an improved service. Clearly those who were stuck in the backlog, for them it was a terrible experience. And unfortunately there was just nothing, not more that we could do about it, because we don't have a magic wand to be, but we made some really good progress by clearing all the unallocated application. Last year, around that time, a little bit earlier, we still had 1,700 unallocated applications. Now all our applications are allocated within a week or two at the most of receiving them. So if we move on to the next slide, and here are just some headlines again to illustrate further that we're not stopping at this. We do want to improve the service further, and we've got clear actions in hand that make sure that it is further improved. And it's just quite a range. So again, I won't read it out because hopefully we'll have already read it. And lastly, if we just move on to the last slide, so this was the proposed list of measures for de-designation. This is actually pretty much the same as what we've previously shared as well. And so these are again the sort of key themes or element measures for putting to the Secretary of State that they should de-designate us as soon as possible. Realistically, like I said in the paper, the formal statistics don't get published until December. So the formal statistics for Q2, which is ending today, don't get published until December. So I think it's quite unlikely that even if we submit our request in October, that we probably won't hear anything until after those formal stats are published. And to an extent it depends on how willing they are in taking a more pragmatic approach, because officially the measures, the performance measures, are very backward looking, because they look over 2 years. You could also see that if he wanted to, depends on, is it he the planning minister or she the Secretary of State, but depending on whether they want to be pragmatic and actually help us to improve quicker, because no doubt we can improve quicker if we are de-designated sooner, and therefore take a more pragmatic approach than insisting on the strict letter, so to speak, then they will go with us. But you could easily see as well that they might not do it because, strictly speaking, we won't fulfil the criteria, because if you look 2 years backwards, the performance was just not good enough over those 2 years before. But clearly we can't change history, and it just, in my mind, would certainly not be right to keep punishing us for stuff that's in the past. So, yeah, I think that's all I was going to say by way of introduction.
Okay, I can see a forest hands. So let me just get a little list together. Right. I think I've got everyone's hands up. I was going to ask a couple of questions first, though, and abuse chair's privilege. So on the delivery indicators, you indicated, you pointed out that we seem to have had a little rise over the past couple of months from the figures in July in terms of the applications 26 plus weeks old that are outstanding. Is that just a function of the pattern of applications coming in as we've been working through the backlog? Is it just a reflection of that sort of seasonality?
I think that is the most likely explanation. I suppose also in part that I alluded to some disruptions over August and September, so basically during summer where partly because people being on leave and therefore not the decision numbers not having been that high. In September we also had a disproportionate number of people, and it's just a number of coincidences coming together, lots of people moving house, some people being ill, one person whose child started school, so there were just a lot of things that kind of meant that unusually we had less capacity. I couldn't necessarily predict that, but also, and that's possibly having a bigger impact because, actually I didn't touch on that, we did wind down our reliance on agency resource. So over the last year, because we couldn't recruit permanent staff in terms of sort of more middle and senior experience straight away last year, so we had to very much rely on grow your own approach, where we recruited lots of graduates last year, and we were very fortunate actually that they were very good, and so we could grow them quickly, and also through some more creative recruitment we've been able to also fill the medium level posts, and thereby reduce our dependence on agency staff who are much more expensive than our own staff, so to speak, and where we've had a mixed experience as well. Now our best ones only left in the summer, so over August and September. And each time somebody leaves, they, as much as we try to get them to finish all their cases and not hand over anything, there is always stuff that needs handing over, and that is quite disruptive, sometimes more than others, but that's certainly a key reason why during August and September there was quite a bit of a slowdown from having to hand over so many cases, some of which have been handed over a number of times before, and where we were under a slightly different impression of what we would receive, and kind of, you sometimes find things when the case officer who takes things on finds things in a slightly different state than we might believe. But yeah, so I think these are probably the main reasons why it's gone a bit slower, but equally where we are confident we should be able to pick up pace now.
Okay, and I was going to ask a question around the local list. So, so the new local list has gone live, is that right?
Yes.
I guess it's too early to tell if it's having impact on the level of information and the ability to validate applications as and when they come in. But anecdotally, does it appear to be working so far? And when do you think there will be sort of the, you know, sort of hard data to say that, you know, we're getting people making applications in line with the local list, which is making it easier to validate and therefore easing the applications at that end of the pipeline?
It's definitely too early to say it now. I mean, it's been live for about 2 weeks. But it's a good question. I should definitely raise that to the validation team who do the first sort of checking.
Yeah.
But then we clearly also need to ask our officers around the quality. But I would have thought, you know, we need at least 2 months or so to see whether it's making a difference. But clearly we should also actually alert our officers to keep an eye out for it, and if we spot anything that's not working yet, so that we can start. Because what we haven't yet done enough of, in my mind, is flag things more on the website, because that's what we want to do in parallel, to use our website more to advise on how to do things better.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that, Simone. Okay, I had a list, and so I've got Jenny, Phoebe, Paula, and then I've got Kai, Toby, and Serena. I don't know if it Mark indicated or not.
I do, but I want to chat about the net game thing rather than...
All right, well, we'll hold your fire on that.
I'll jump in first on that one then,
Sorry.
So I suppose the most obvious question is there any risk to us trying to do this, applying for de-designation now, as opposed to waiting 2 months? What's the risk of doing it now?
I suppose theoretically the risk is that we would get turned down.
Mm-hmm.
I think that risk is quite low. If anything, and if, you know, how we will cage it as well is say, you know, that we're keen to work with them in providing additional information if they're interested in that, and just kind of flagging a number of options as well around kind of recognising that you know, being upfront about that in the past, that officially the 2 year statistics doesn't look good yet, but actually that we need to work on a forward-looking basis.
Mm-hmm.
What helps in my mind is that in parallel and completely unrelatedly, the government is also considering about what to do more generally around the performance management system, and that, you know, to put to them as an offer to use us as a sort of case study and learning point in terms of actually what works well and what doesn't work well, and what would be more smart incentives to incentivise the right behaviour, because I don't think the current measures are smart in that sense.
Mm. Yeah, so that sort of leads me into something else that you said was, you said that de-designation would in and of itself help us improve the service,
Yes.
and I didn't understand how it would.
So the reason for that is that the mechanism, so if applicants choose to go to the planning inspector instead rather than coming to us, which is the effect of the designation, it means that A, we lose the fee on those, B, simply the way it's administered, because it's kind of something that was kind of set up by the planning inspector in quite an ad hoc fashion. So the administrative burden is a lot greater, and it's those two factors combined that just make it a lot harder for us to deal with these applications efficiently. I would also say that just because of what it is, there's then often more press interest associated with it. It's just all factors that make it more cumbersome for us to deal with it.
Right, so essentially, it's important that we do this now because it's costing us money and it's impacting our ability to use our offices efficiently and increase that capacity. Yeah, I think that my only last question is that oh yeah, so no, I did have one cheeky question, which is how many people have left over the last 15 months?
Yes, I was interested.
I can't tell you off the top of my head, I would have to look back, but there were a fair number still last year as well. And again, unfortunately, it tended to be the more sort of mid to senior level. And it was a combination of reasons. Actually, a lot of the time it was more to do with their personal circumstances, including that housing in Bristol is very expensive, and therefore they lived quite far out and found a place that was more convenient for them to, to have a shorter commute to. That was certainly, at least in 3 cases, the situation.
All right. So we're still in a position where there's a high risk that we're going to be losing a large proportion of our... So 3 people, that's, you just said the number 3, that's 10% of the workforce.
Yeah.
So we're expecting to lose 10% of the workforce every year. And in that kind of circumstance, well,
No.
I don't know, it seems like, oh well, September we didn't do very well because someone was moving house, and it seems like this, whilst you're obviously doing better and you have got more capacity, I'm still quite concerned that it's not a very resilient improvement.
So, yes and no. So on the one hand, I think there is, you're right, there is a continued risk that we may well keep losing people, but that we need to make sure we do our best in retaining people, and there's definitely more that we should do there, but that there are some tricky issues, because a lot of that is to do with remuneration and the package that we can offer. However, the sort of the plus side of so many people just having stepped up into a new role does actually also mean that they have just secured a much better deal, and therefore I think it's much less likely that those who've just secured a promotion here that we are at risk of losing them. Also, I don't know where everybody lives, but but most of the people who, who, as far as I'm aware, those who would be at greater risk of losing because they would have a far commute, that has already happened. And we have a number of people who have been successful in relocating to Bristol and seem really happy here. So in that sense, I think the risk isn't quite as great, but in principle, you're right, it's still there, it is fragile, and we need to do what we can around making sure we value our staff appropriately, and that we show that as well in how we in the benefits we offer.
Could I just very, very quickly, the graph that shows us back to where we were pre-backlog, which is still not performing as well as we'd like to do, say our risks around staff retention are back to where they were, so they were very bad during the backlog. And now we're back to pretty much every other planning authority in the country, which is that there's not enough planners in the country and we lose them.
Thank you very much for that. Fabian, you're next on my list.
Okay, 2 points. First of all, shorter, simpler reports. I'm assuming that's to give us less to read in run-up to planning committees. That's great, because sometimes I've been in situations where something's come up to planning committee and details come up that would make or break whether we grant or not. And it's buried in the detail. And so if we've got reports that are more to the point, tell us clearly what is and isn't relevant, that should help us get the decisions right first time without having to defer and all the extra work involved in that. Great progress on this, but I've actually, on getting out of the backlog, but I've actually had a recent email from a constituent saying that they had an application validated 28th December 23, but it's still stuck, you know, still to be assessed by a planning officer. Can I forward that to you?
Yes, please. I can't, you know, that despite best efforts, and particularly in those early days, some did get stuck for longer than I certainly would have wished them. If I can just come back on your simpler, shorter report, that's absolutely what we're doing, but I think we need to distinguish as well between there's officer reports that go with delegated decisions, and there is committee reports. And the focus so far has been on the shorter, simpler officer reports, because that's where the volume of the decisions are, that's where we can gain greater efficiencies. That's not to say that we should also take the same approach to committee reports, but that's where we haven't really had the time to focus on so far, where we just have prioritised the volume reports so far, but it's definitely something we need to get to as well.
Thank you. Paula, you were next.
Well, actually, some of my questions got answered because it was very much some of the questions that Jenny asked. So I'd like to say two things, if you'll indulge me. One is, I'd like to comment on the fact that I first met Simone very shortly after you arrived. We had a meeting. And I remember two things you said. One was that the situation was much worse than you'd expected. And the second thing you said was that somebody who you had just employed had just handed the notice in after a week because they've got better pay in the private sector. So I saw the strength of the challenge that was ahead of you, and I would really like to commend you now for your leadership, because this didn't happen by accident. So I think you have been very steadfast and proactive, and also great communication skills during this tough period. So big applause for that. And I think now that you've explained about the de-designation, I do really think it's really worth taking whatever risks there are and trying to get the de-designation as soon as possible. Because I think everybody here wants to have a planning department that's progressive and getting better all the time. And personally, that I feel that a lot of your resource is being spent on people who are looking for certificates of lawfulness or listed building consents and all of those things. And I would really welcome an opportunity to get this de-designation, and then hopefully you will be bringing on systems and policies that will allow citizens to be able to retrofit their homes more quickly and in a more efficient and cheaper manner, which is what citizens in Bristol really want. So that's the sort of planning department we need to get to. So anything we can do to get there is the right thing to be doing.
Thank you for the kind words, and actually to start doing briefly on that second point around making it simpler for retrofit, particularly on listed buildings. We are actually we've already started the work for a local listed building consent order, where basically we had to do a lot of upfront work in doing the evidence gathering. We had the benefit of a student from UWE doing an agency project with us, but also where more recently additional resource in the heritage team is now helping us to get that quicker over the line. The plan is, I think if I remember correctly, that we would get all that sort of documentation put together where we have to get it agreed with Historic England as well, to hopefully by the end of the year. We'll do it sooner if possible, but it looks more like probably the end of the year start the consultation, so it's something we have to consult on, and then once we've consulted on it, we can then probably adopt it.
So is that a paper that would be coming back then to this committee, or would it need to? No?
I'm not sure it would need to. It's maybe something we can take to the chairs, but I would say if it,
Well, let's not get in the way. Let's not put obstacles in the way.
Yeah.
Running across it.
Stop the long
progress. Long progress.
Brilliant. Yeah. And if we can share it with you as and when it gets to the stage of that. Kai.
I'm sorry. Can I just say? I mean, clearly we get publicly consulted on, and maybe the point of bringing it back to the committee then is for adoption.
Yeah, that's right.
Kai.
Yeah, thanks. Just on the workforce issues, really. So I'm just looking at the table. So you've got 2 staff to start. So that'll take you up to, is it for the equivalent of 36 FTEs? Is that you then fully on the template fully staffed, or are there other vacancies that you're trying to fill outside of that?
No, certainly in the core DM team, that would then be
Fully staffed.
staffed.
Okay.
Having said that, there is the, you know, where we're saying an area where we are also exploring more is around PPAs, so planning performance agreements, and whether through that we might be able to do more, but then ultimately it's certainly where we currently think the right level is, but maybe just to explain the +2, because that may have, I should have mentioned that, you might be wondering about that. Clearly there is also quite a big backlog in enforcement, and where we just had to prioritise in terms of how we can't do everything at once, so we prioritised the development management backlog because actually it also impacted on enforcement, so it's only right to sort that out first. Now that we've got to this much better place, we felt it's the right time to now move 2 of our graduates into enforcement to start accelerating, dealing with the backlog there. Ultimately, we can take a decision at a future point in time, you know, how we best continue then, in terms of the 2, and ultimately because there's also consultation going on at the national level, which, you know, the outcome of which will influence again that decision, so we can just return to that.
Can I just ask a follow-up, because the council's conducting a workforce strategy at the moment, and it's something the HR committee is looking at. And the big thing that the HR committee is interested in is, I mean, you mentioned growing our own. And I just wondered, are there apprenticeship routes into becoming a planning officer? And if there are, I think it's something that we should promote. In terms of the skills gap, we've got right across the council and other technical skills, and I'm a big firm believer that we should be offering more high-level apprenticeships and routes in by that approach.
You're absolutely right, and that is actually something that I had wanted to do sooner. And then the first year it didn't happen because we didn't manage to get our paperwork sorted in time, because it is fairly bureaucratic. But the second year we then had, well, we thought we had the paperwork ready in time, but when we actually then approached UE with it, they said, oh sorry, you would have had to ask us much sooner because we have a long waiting list for these type of apprenticeship roles and we can't have one now. The earliest you could have, you may be able to have one is February, because we're thinking of maybe launching a new cohort. So it's something that we're still talking to you about, whether we can have somebody in February. If so, then that is actually one vacancy that we're kind of holding or thinking of possibly filling in February, but it is also with the financial situation that we're in.
It's difficult.
Yeah,
I mean,
difficult
it's
balancing, yeah.
I mean, it's something you definitely have the full support of the HR committee on, so I mean, if you want it to be more ambitious on that, we definitely, although we don't control the purse, and it is right across the council. We've got a number of, we're missing engineers from the harbour, and traffic, TRO officers and all sorts, and I think as an organisation we need to be doing a lot more on apprenticeships, and especially the higher level apprenticeships.
John.
I was just thinking come in as well, because I think it's a really good point, Councillor. We're keen to look at that across GNR and across the council, so something to do more on. Could I just add to what was said earlier, because I think a lot of progress has been made, obviously, but I think it is worth just emphasising the point that Simone made, that this has been moving away from agency staff and bringing internal solutions. This has been, your approach has been to sort of grow from within and to lead from within, hasn't it, which has been very effective. So.
Thanks, John. Right, I've got 2 more for this section. Oh, 3
I haven't
months.
spoken yet.
You haven't spoken yet, Tom, that is right. Can I ask people, I'm conscious of time, can I ask people to keep it as short and brief as they can? I've got Toby, Sabina and Tom.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions, but I will try and keep them short. On the KPIs, the applications 26 plus weeks old has been relatively stable and has actually gone up slightly in the past few months, and it's at about 480 something. In December, the projections show it going to 150. How is that happening, given that your resources now pretty much topped out?
Well, that's to do with the A, the productivity increases that we're seeking to make, but B, also the 26 plus weeks old is kind of the backlog that we kind of more or less close the door to in December. So it's not like, it's not like new applications are going in there. It should just actually stop that the bag that has got all the old stuff in it should just become empty at some point. And why?
It's been increasing recently, though, so it's
indeed, because we've not been making the decisions quickly enough. But and I think a lot of that is to do with the handovers as well. Where there is a slight tension as well is that, and that's where it goes back to the financial situation for council as well, which clearly we have to be mindful of too, where we've been seeking to agree more planning performance agreement with those developers who are willing to do them. Clearly where they are paying extra to get a better service from us, we have to then deliver that better service. It does though mean that those officers working on those PPAs cannot give quite as much time to the old ones, and there is a bit of a tension that we just need to think, where we are constantly looking at further innovations, what else can we do to just make it quicker, to be able to deal with the volume applications swiftly and the older ones as well. Some of it I think is, I'm increasingly thinking, is also to do with us being held up by the speed of other consultees in the council, and how can we break through that we get those quicker. We've already made some progress in that area, but not enough. And some of it is also, I think, to do with the confidence of particularly more junior officers. And because something that we've been doing more often, encouraging all our case officers to do is what we call the case officer is sovereign approach, so that if we don't get a consultee response in time, that we just make our decision anyway. Now with some consultees that is more dangerous, so to speak, than with others, because clearly, like the Environment Agency, or they just hold far too much power, and rightly so as well. It's really quite important that we get, that we have the full information there before we make the decision. Whereas with others, it's maybe a bit more nice to have. So if it's around design or so, and where it's quite subjective anyway, so I always say, well, maybe we then just take it to a senior planning officer and to give them a steer, and we just make the decision anyway. But that requires experience and confidence, and that is something we're focusing on much more now.
Okay.
To absorb decisions.
So on that specific KPI, I appreciate there's a lot of actions in training and innovations coming, but it's only 3 months away, and I'll say on record that I'm sceptical, and I think we need to be realistic in our approach. We're going in the right direction, that's undoubted, but just putting a number that's a third of what it is now in 3 months' time, I'm not sure it's convincing. And the planning inspectorate is going to need to be convinced as well, so they might ask the same kind of question. I'll limit myself to one more of my long list of questions about communication between the case officers and applicants, but also councillors. I was looking at the textual feedback that you've had from applicants, and I noticed it was different in that version from this version, the comments that they've chosen, so I've looked at both. Lots of positive comments, which is obviously great. the negative ones often focused on communications with case officers, and it seems like there's a bit of inconsistency there. And very anecdotally, some of my fellow councillors have seen this as well, where they struggle to get responses from some case officers, but some others are very on the ball. So what's being done to address that communication problem?
Well, I think again, it's quite similar to the answer that I've given you already. It's a combination of any. I think there's quite a big difference between applications that were stuck in the backlog and the ones that have come in more recently. And there's also there's definitely a difference between case officers as well. Some are much more experienced and sort of confident and find it easy to just give a quick response, I suppose, whereas others are much more worried and just overwhelmed actually a lot of the time. Most of my officers, they get so many emails every day, so despite not being able, you often, and myself included, we often still build up more emails at the end of the day than we had at the beginning of the day, despite the best efforts to answer them all, and it's just impossible, and it's actually quite a demoralising situation. Some of the improvements that we're trying to make around digital will hopefully help us in the medium and long term as well. But yeah, in the meantime, we're just doing what we can around sharing good practice in the team to help those who find it harder at the moment.
Thank you, Simone. So I've got Selina and then Tom, and then we're moving on to BNG. So yeah.
So yeah, I think it's congratulations, great trajectory and impressive so far. Notwithstanding some comments made, so that's great. A couple of things. I just want to raise this as an issue rather than a question, and then I'll come off the question around further funding support in terms of possibly planning application fees. Are there plans nationally? I know it's not really a question, just a comment to raise planning application fees so there's more resource so you can expand the team.
Yes, so the consultation that closed last Tuesday, that also had an element around increasing planning fees.
Yeah.
And we responded to that and very much encouraged the government to do that.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. It's very much around, so the focus, and I think that is rightly so, is around those applications where the fee is completely, in a way, disproportionate to the effort that we have to put in. Because there's quite a number of application types where, in a way, the time budget that the fee gives you is almost impossible to deliver within. I'm reasonably hopeful that the government will take that forward and that will help. But
finally, resource supplying service properly. Recognising the valuable service. I mean, nationally.
Can I just add a bit of caution? We just nevertheless need to be the income targets that we set as a council for the department needs to still be realistic, because at the moment it's very optimistic and makes it very difficult, because there has also been a quite substantial drop in applications and drop in fee income in comparison to previous years. So if we're not being realistic in the fee income that we set, we may still struggle.
Yeah. And then the question I have is, yes, we've got improved performance and it's target hitting in a way, box ticking to get to regulation, I get that. But my concern running alongside that for me is major planning applications where it's in resident citizens' interest for those to go to planning committee, and that may make it a slow process. But in your experience with this, is this drive to de-designate going to clash with the ability for major planning applications to come to committee? Because that's extremely important for us board members as well.
I think it's a bit more nuanced than that. Because in the sense that actually in a big city like ours, we still get a great number of major applications, and actually some majors are relatively small.
Yeah, I should have said significant.
Yeah.
Sorry, rephrase that.
And so, I think we have a good balance at the moment in that means that the really big ones and the really controversial ones come to committee. That if we significantly change this, then it would start to interfere with our ability to deliver promptly and to deliver and to deliver a good service, because taking something to committee is much more resource intensive.
Well, that's why I raised it. I think there has to be a balance there between, yes, your drive to speed up, to hit those targets, to get them designated, but also make sure the process is still democratic and committees are seeing those, well, I should have said, as significant applications, I would say.
Yeah, I'll jump in, Simone. This is something that's been brought to my attention by others, other members as well, and it is something that we are doing a little bit of work on, just to make it clearer what the criteria is for considering things for committee and where that decision lies and at what stage in the process it lies, because the current designations would allow the planning service to make every decision, which obviously is not a position that we necessarily want. But on the flip side of that is, we need to probably just be a little bit more clear about what our criteria is for taking things to committee, and that is a piece of work that we have. We've had conversations with Ron and others. So that is something that we're conscious of. Tom, last word, or last question.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned that. I mean, I've had an email confirming that the HRA one we've escalated is valid and will be going to an escalation panel in due course. So, looking at that balance of delegations and in consultations is quite important. And I think it's probably important that a lot of this is discussed with the chairs of the Development Control Committee, isn't it, as well? So I think there is consultation happening, isn't there, at the moment, I think, on some of those large schemes that have gone through into delegated approval, which have been quite sizable schemes actually that have gone through. I've noted. I had a couple of practical questions actually. So, how many applications have gone to the PINS service?
I think, I don't know the very latest for sure, but I think there are about 14 at the moment that are live.
In 6-ish months?
Since 6th of March. But I am wondering, I'm getting slightly worried that there seems to have been a slight uptick in recent weeks. And I'm wondering, is this just one particular individual or applicant who has been successful once before and thinks he or she have found a route, or what's really behind it, or maybe I'm worrying unnecessarily. But I just think the longer it goes on, the worse it is for everybody actually, because PINS is not the inspector. I'm not keen on this either.
No, yeah, I was just trying to understand. So you say, sorry, there are 14 currently live, or that there's been 14 in total that have gone? Total.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So it's not a lot.
It's not a great number, but still 14 too many.
Yeah, of course. I think what I'm just interested in is when we've talked about financial impacts and that earlier in the conversation, we need to be a bit careful if actually it's only been 14 non-majors that have gone, so that we don't kind of have a misunderstanding of what that looks like. So that was the first thing. Secondly, slightly tangentially to this, the residential development survey that is published annually, that looks at number of planning permissions, what the housing delivery figures were for the previous 12 months. When can we expect to see the one that runs to the end of March 2024?
Good question. I'm not too sure. I need to find out because that's another team actually.
That's fine. If it needs to be taken.
Sorry, I didn't quite hear. What was it?
The residential development survey. It's the thing. It's the survey that confirms like the total figures like housing delivery for the previous financial year. It tends to take a while because I have to collate things like council tax records and all sorts of stuff. So they just tend to be autumn. But we're really interested in knowing just where that is, and I'm sure it'll be a great thing for this committee to look into.
Yeah.
That was me.
Yeah. Thank you, Tom. Okay. everyone's had their say on that, hopefully, and if not, moving on anyway. Biodiversity net gain and the securing of thereof. Do you want to give a quick verbal version of the report, and then we'll go to questions with Mark already lined up first.
Yeah, I mean, like we outlined in the paper, this is quite a technical delivery mechanism specifically needed to secure us being able to deliver biodiversity net gain on council-owned land that's suitable for it, I hasten to add, because we at the moment we can't do this because we can't enter into Section 106 agreements. They are legal agreements that we would enter into if it wasn't anybody else than ourselves. We can enter into legal agreements with them to secure the delivery. We can't do that with ourselves. Because we're a unitary authority, we can't do it with an upper tier authority either. So if we, in two-tier authorities, the district simply enters into such sort of an arrangement with the upper tier authority. Medium and longer term, there are plans afoot that the combined authority will take on that role. But this will take so long, quite likely a whole year. We just can't wait that long. We're already losing biodiversity net gain units outside of the city because we don't currently have a mechanism to deliver it and secure it on our own sites, and therefore for schemes that cannot wait that long are having to go to private providers who can only provide it outside Bristol because there's no private provider offering it in the city at the moment, and therefore there is quite an urgency as well with this, and therefore this arrangement with a neighbouring authority who are in the same situation because all our neighbours are also unitaries offers us a cost-effective solution to deliver an interim solution more quickly.
Okay. Mark.
Conscious of the time, Chair, so thank you, so I'll try and give it quick. You mentioned WEC, which is going to be my question. How quickly can that set up? Because ideally you have a strategic, holistic view on that one. And second of all, our neighbouring authorities obviously won't do this for free. How much of the Section 106 has to be top sliced for administration to do this for us?
Yeah, so like I said,
I know it's reciprocal, but obviously we're going to be robbing Peter to pay Paul here, but how much do we lose?
So on the combined authority point first, we think it's at least a year. They haven't made the application yet, which I think is again still a couple of months or so at least away, and then it takes about a year from there. In terms of how much it costs, do you know?
So it really depends on what we're trying to secure. So it depends on how complex the site is and what the monitoring costs will be. But the idea is, through the conversation that we've had, it will be an agreement between us where we are providing them the same service as they are us. So it isn't a money-making scheme. Whereas we could secure it through a conservation covenant with a responsible body, but they're making money. That's the whole purpose of them setting themselves up as a responsible body. So we're benefiting by using other local planning authorities to have this reciprocal kind of agreement that isn't out for making profit. It's just to kind of make sure we cover all the costs and get things going, because they also are having the same challenges that we are.
Okay. Final quick one. Do we have officer capacity enough to administer it then for other authorities, considering all the problems that the planning authorities are facing at the moment?
I mean, it's not about actually having more to do. It's just being able to do it for every scheme that needs one. Where at the moment some schemes we can't secure it for it because of a technicality.
All right, okay. Thank you, Chair. No issues.
Paula.
I'm going to ask this question risking to sound both naive and NIMBY at the same time, but I'm going to ask it anyway. This goes back to a while ago where I spent the morning at the Downs on the committee talking about the goat gully and how wonderful it could all be if we only had some money. And then I went to a planning meeting where they said, oh, we'd love to do the bit of the biodiversity thing, but we just don't have the space to put the stuff in. And there's a lot of talk about trees. And it did strike me that, you know, it was quite clear that, talking to the education officer, you know, the woman working on the dams, that, you know, loads of money could be spent on the goat gully and putting in new fencing and all those sort of things, and lots of ways that would absolutely improve biodiversity on that space. It did make me think that, are we properly exploring all the ways that we can add biodiversity within our city where people can experience it before we go towards this? So are these innovative ways? How is that all being done? So how do organisations, you know, like get in touch with you and say, right, you know, put some money our way?
Are you talking about them delivering their own units on their sites that they own?
Well, I'm thinking about, you know, I suppose I'm just saying that, you know, people at the Downs are just thinking we don't really know about this. I think there's possibly a comms job that needs to be done. I would imagine that within our authority there are probably lots of little units or places where people would want to maybe have a little pocket forests, or there's loads of ideas, which, I mean, obviously my priority would be to make Bristol as green and as biodiverse and keep our biodiversity here within the city. So I feel as if, and I'd love to be told I'm wrong, but I feel as if something's been missed out here with our local small groups and communities.
But that's exactly what we are trying to do as well, to keep as much of biodiversity improvements in the city as possible. This mechanism is specifically for delivering and securing biodiversity net gain on council-owned land, because we can't do it otherwise. We're working with parks,
Yes, we are.
to kind of look at all the sites on which it would be possible to deliver biodiversity net gain. In terms of which sites would then be best suited, that's actually where it often comes back to the development side, because there needs to be a link as well in terms of the type of habitat units, so to speak, that are being lost. It needs to be replaced with same type, basically, and that's why, you know, we can't generically say yes, this one will be first or that one will be first. But it's definitely something that we're working closely with the parks to make sure we do.
So in particular, we're looking at trees, because there will be a demand to meet that tree requirement. And so what parks are doing is they're looking at what land they have available and to deliver individual trees and starting to map those in order for us to, like, when we do get something in place, be able to secure those legally and put them up for B&G units, be able to deliver those for developments that are happening locally. So once we've got a mapped out kind of like area of each individual tree placement, we can say, right, this development's happening here, there's trees that are like ready to go in this area, therefore we can sell them these units and deliver those trees there. So it's part of a more holistic kind of like movement forward.
I suppose what I'm saying are two things. One is that it's not only just about trees, because there are other methods of harvesting trees. And the second one is, now as you're talking, I'm reminded that there's a small little plot somewhere in Ashley, just right down the street, and I visited once, where there's a gap in a street where I think, you know, going back to the Second World War in the Central War or something. And it's just a vacant bit of nothing. And I've talked to people there who 4 or 5 years ago, wanted to turn that into a little mini pocket forest. And that's never happened. But, you know, that seems like the ideal thing, that biodiversity. So what I'm saying is, the question I'm asking is, how do we know that, or how do we get people in the city to know that this fund is there and that people can exploit it?
It's not really a fund, and I think that's where we need to be careful and manage expectations.
I shouldn't say fund, but I mean it's just
a particular example around that potential for a pocket park. I think the first thing that you would need to know is who owns the land. If it is Bristol City Council, then this may be a vehicle to deliver it. But clearly we also always need to make sure when that delivering biodiversity net gain is actually the best outcome in that place for the council as a whole, because there is clearly other needs we're trying to meet with our land as well. And that, so there is sort of some complex how can I say, scoring or screening that we need to go through. But certainly once we've arrived at the place, say, yes, this is the right place for delivering biodiversity gain on this site, and it matches this development proposal of ours. We then have a mechanism so that we can legally secure it, and in a cost-effective way as well, with our neighbouring authority to actually bring it forward, and are not forced to go outside of Bristol because we can't do it in Bristol at the moment.
Those are the assurances, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? I've got Mark again.
Quickly.
Yeah.
I've got a quickie as well.
All right, I'll go for Fabian first and then come back to you.
On the issue of trees, it's something I read in another report. Obviously, the amount of CO2 that can be collected from mature trees is a lot more than from new trees. So obviously, if we have a situation where mature trees are lost, and that could be quite a loss in CO2 carbon capture. So is that being mitigated in any way? Development.
Shall I leave that to you to answer? Or shall I have a go first? Basically, I think there's two things to say. In the B&G or biodiversity net gain is factored over 30 years, and therefore that is part of the calculation, but also as part, more generally, as part of our tree replacement policy. That's a key reason why it's not one for one, but actually one for many more, and therefore the size of the trunk, which is I suppose the key function of age and maturity, determines the multiplier, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah, just to add to that, so there is a risk factor involved in delivering it, like planting a tree, they know it's going to take decades, so as Simon said, it's not replaced one by one, but for another one, it is going to need a lot more trees to replace one single tree being lost, and that's dependent on the age and size of the tree.
And can we also, this has come up, can we also think about tree planting as a way of helping with drainage, surface water and stuff like, and flood mitigation stuff, because obviously they have roots, they absorb water. Can we, in certain places, that can be very useful as well.
That would definitely also be my layman's understanding. Having said that, I know we have issues with the Environment Agency that they object to trees being planted in the river pools, apparently because it increases flooding. But it is definitely something that we don't quite understand or agree with.
Close to on a riverbank rather than actually in the watercourse itself?
No, on the riverbank. But yeah, it is.
There are entire tree species designed to do that.
We have a number of flood projects underway in the city, and natural flood management mitigation is part of the defence strategy.
And I've now got visions of mangroves along the river.
Well, I have visions of the whopping willow, so it's something.
Mark.
Very quick. Happy with the proposal, so not a problem with that. I do generally think this is probably better done long term at the WECA level. Several of us represent wards on the outside of the city, and I think a strategic approach with biodiversity net gain, where you have green pathways from outside the city heading into the city, WECA is probably best placed to make sure that this kind of project of BNG links up as we have these green highways into and out. So I know they haven't yet fully put the application in, possibly a letter from yourself, Chair, to our leader, or who sits on the WECA committee, just make sure that it does actually get a bit of impetus on that and it doesn't drop off.
Yeah, that's
a suggestion.
That's a good idea. Any other comments on this? No? Okay, thank you everyone. And thank you, Simone. Like Tubman's work on this, it's a clunky arrangement, and I agree with Mark. It's something that would be better at a strategic level than on an ad hoc basis with neighbouring authorities. But we do need to be able to absolutely to be able to secure as much BNG in our city, and you know, and not elsewhere, much as you know, much as I'm sure elsewhere would like our BNG gain. So I'm going to move to vote, and just for absolute clarity on this, I think I'm going to take two seconds. Oh, we just have to note it, don't we? We don't have to have a vote on this one. Okay, in that case, are we happy to note all three recommendations? And actually, no,
To endorse.
So, we endorse the suggested approach with regards to de-destination and note the update regarding planning performance. Is everyone happy with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And then we also endorse the suggested approach to secure the DNG implementation of BCC owned lands. Is everyone happy with that? Or is there any dissent? No? That's 9 out of 9 on both those. So, lovely. Thank you very much, everyone, for this uncontentious session of the Economic Skills Committee. It remains to be seen how long we can maintain this unanimity, but it's been good. Just a couple of things I was just going to say. Just be ready on your way out in case they're filming and you find yourself in some Channel 4
we can get back down.
members of the public here, of course. So there's that. I realised that was quite lengthy for an agenda which just had 3 items on it, but I was keen to take everybody's comments, so you want to make yourself split. If the next agenda is likely to be longer, we may have to be a little bit tighter on time, but I am always keen to hear from everybody who wants to speak in these things, and so it's a bit of a juggling act there, but yeah, thank you everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillors, for your information regarding the recording, 1, the proper place to complain about it is the Strategy and Resources Committee. 2, although there is new technology coming, that's not the issue. The issue is officer time. So 3, some budget needs to be found, which might involve doing a backroom deal on allocating that, but that's the situation.
Or paying you.
Not sure they can do that.